Well, good morning once again to Calvary Chapel West, you beautiful people. May I take this time and opportunity to let you know just how much I love you. I haven't told you that in quite a while, but I do. I sincerely do. When you talk about friends and associates, there's certain people that you just feel good to be in their company. And you guys are in that group. Yes, we had our fellowship yesterday, and for those of you who made it, I want to thank you. You know, your company was greatly craved. I enjoyed myself sitting and conversing with you guys, and the food was amazing, but the dessert was up there. I'm a dessert guy, you know. So my doctor and I will discuss the results of what happened yesterday, but, you know, they say you only live once, so let's live it well. Amen? Let's live it well. Today's lesson is taken from Luke chapter 8, verse 22 to 25. Luke chapter 8, verse 22 to 25. Starting at verse 22, it says, "And it happened on a certain day that he got into a boat with his disciples, and he said to them, 'Let us cross over to the other side of the lake.' And they launched out. But as they sailed, he fell asleep. And a windstorm came down on the lake, and they were filling with water, and were in jeopardy. And they came to him and awoke him, saying, 'Master, Master, we are perishing.' Then he arose and rebuked the wind and the raging of the water, and they ceased, and there was a calm. But he said to them, 'Where is your faith?' And they were afraid and marveled, saying to one another, 'Who is this? For he commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him.'" The story of Jesus calming the storm is told in all three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Jesus, he's teaching near a lake. And afterwards, he wanted a break from the crowd. So he decided to travel to the other side of the lake. Perhaps there were no towns there. There were less people there. So he's choosing to go away. Many times we want a break from society. We want a break from what? Sometimes we might even want a break from our spouse. So we travel, we go away. They often say a change is as good as a rest. So he did not just want a change of scenery. He wanted a break. He wanted to travel in order to get this break. And not long after he sailed, he fell asleep. So we understand why he wanted this break. Jesus was exhausted. He needed a break. And when he slept, a storm arose. Now I want us to understand that Jesus was not in a yacht downstairs, tucked away, sleeping on his duvet. No, I want us to imagine this as being a fishing boat. A boat was able to hold at least 15 people, and all of them are exposed to the element. It's not as if Jesus is downstairs, tucked away. No, Jesus is right there with everybody else, exposed to all the elements. Now, while sailing across this lake, a powerful windstorm suddenly descended. Now, scientific studies have confirmed the accuracy of this description. It may sound far-fetched, but this is true because of the terrain. You see, this lake was situated 700 feet below sea level, and the mountain surrounding them is approximately 1,000 feet above sea level, which is about the height of the Empire State Building. And due to this terrain, the winds would rush down the mountain at speed and go onto the lake, leading to occurrences of severe storms. So in a moment, a storm could suddenly erupt. Within a twinkle of an eye, when you think all was calm and nice, when you feel like it's all right to rest, a storm could suddenly erupt. This was a dangerous place to be. The storm was so severe that the boat was filling with water, and the disciples went into a panic. The mind scrambled because everything happened so fast. Now remember, these are seasoned fishermen, some of these people. They know this lake and they know it well. Yet their mind scrambled. They're in a panic. They don't know what to do. Some of these fishermen are veterans. They've been fishing all their lives, so they know the dynamics of this lake. They understand. They can look at the clouds and see what's going on. They feel a draft and know what's going on. They feel a speck of water and they know what's happened. They watch the fish and they know what's happened. You know, these people are experienced when it comes to this region. And here they are in a panic. It's as though they were caught off guard. And although they are professional fishermen, they are probably at this time screaming at the top of their heads, Jesus, Jesus, we're dying. Master, Master, we're perishing. Master, we're perishing. Like we all do. When we're in that state, when we know not, we either fight or flight. We have two choices. When we're taken by surprise, we either fight, take our stance, or we run. And here they are. They don't know what to do. This thing is beyond them. It's bigger than them. They want to get out of this situation, but where to run to? They're in the middle of a lake. And what are they doing? They're interrupting Jesus' sleep. That's what they're doing. Many years of marriage and several tense moments, a wife and a husband came to an arrangement. The wife would not interrupt the husband's concentration while he was in the middle of a project. That was the arrangement. On several occasions, the wife interrupted the husband when he was deep in thought, when he was carrying out a task, to his dismay. So they came to this arrangement. And they finally agreed that when she wanted to speak to him, when she wanted to say something of importance to him, she had to wait until he was ready, until he had done finishing his task. Now, this arrangement worked for many years until one particular day, the husband was working on a project in the garage, and the wife, well acquainted with their arrangement, she walks out to the garage and she stood by the garage door, waiting for the sign for her to interrupt her husband. And when he had come to a certain point of his project, he looked up at his wife, and his wife very calmly and collectively said to him, "The house is on fire." So if there was ever a time when panic would seem to be legitimate, it's when you are in a storm and it's far bigger than you and your boat is sinking. You don't know what to do. That's the kind of situation when all of us get into a scramble and start screaming at the top of our heads. That's not the time to be calm and collective. This passage, it raises many thought-provoking questions about how to react in times of crisis. When I read this account of Jesus calming the storms in the gospel, I am troubled by his rebuke at the disciples being in this panicking state in a life-threatening situation. So I intend to go through this study like the National Transport Safety Board would do when they are approaching an investigation of an accident or a near miss. What can we learn from this mishap? That's what they would be determining. What can we learn? What lessons can we learn? What could we do differently? How can we ensure that our transition, our journey, is a smooth one? I wonder how one would approach Jesus in such a situation without setting aside their faith. Do we approach him like this wife approached her husband, and we just stand by and calmly speak about the situation? Do we approach him in a panic? If you was this disciple and something major like this happened to you, you was in a life-threatening situation and you was rebuked for your action, how would you feel? What would you have done differently? For some, The still in the storm is an easy text to interpret and apply. People would tell us that you just trust Jesus in the storms of life. But how is this done? How does one practice their faith in a frantic moment of life when everything's going wrong? How should we respond if we're in the storm and we're practicing our faith and yet we don't know what to do? We don't know the outcome. It's not as easy as it seems. We are often told, just trust Jesus when you're in the storm. But when the storm is far bigger than you, when the storm is the kind of storm you have not seen before, when the storm takes you off guard and you are not prepared, it's not so easy to do. So verse 22, let us cross over to the other side. With these words, Jesus made a promise to his disciples. He didn't say, let us go to the middle of the lake and then we perish and go to heaven together. No, he said that we're going to go to the other side. Now the lake is a lake of Gennesaret, and it is often known as the Sea of Galilee. It is fed by the Jordan River on the north side near Bethsaida, and it drains out of the Jordan on the south side to feed the Dead Sea. Now, Gennesaret is sometimes translated as Kinneret in the Hebrew, which means harp. So the lake somewhat looked like the shape of a harp. Now this lake is 30 miles long by 8 miles wide at its widest width. And where they are in the lake right now is probably about 5 miles across. So it's still a dangerous place to be in the midst of a storm. And how did they find themselves in this predicament, in this dangerous place? Now remember, Jonah ended up in a storm because of his disobedience. But these disciples, they ended up in this predicament because of their obedience to Jesus. They was obeying their Lord. That's why they ended up here. Now after Jesus taught the parable of the sower and the parable of light, he went to a more private place with his apostles and other disciples to share some other parables. Now Matthew, he tells us that Jesus interacted with two potential disciples. We are told that we have to go out and sow the seed and bring people in. Jesus was doing it. He wanted a rest. But he didn't just go in the boat. He actually approached two other disciples between the time he gave the order to go into the boat and him actually going into the boat. He spoke to two other potential disciples. Matthew 8, verse 18 to 23. And when Jesus saw the great multitude about him, he gave a command to depart to the other side. Then a certain scribe came and said to him, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests. But the Son of Man, meaning me, I'm the Son of Man. The Son of Man, I have nowhere to lay his head. Then another of his disciples said to him, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. But Jesus said to him, Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. Now when he got into a boat, his disciples followed him. Jesus is the example here, and his disciples follow him. Now since Jesus has made this remark about the hardship of his ministry life, we don't know whether these two individuals actually got into the boat. But this man particularly, he expected Jesus wanting him to follow him immediately. This is what this man felt, that Jesus wants me to follow him here and now. And his response was, yes, but. Yes, I'll follow you, but allow me first to bury my father, implying that he will follow Jesus later on. I'm going to follow you, Lord, but just not now. It could be that this gentleman's father had not died yet, and he's waiting for him to die. He's on his sick bed. It could very well be that he has died, but what he's talking about here is transporting the bones of a loved one a year after they died, because that was their custom, to move the bones a year after they died. So It could very well be, but what he's saying to Jesus, in a year's time, after I move my father's bones, I'll follow you. He's delaying the calling on his life. Excuses, excuses, excuses. Is that you today? Making excuses, giving excuses, avoiding God's call on your life. This guy, he wanted to fulfill the custom and tradition expected of sons, especially the firstborn son. So he's giving excuses. I'll follow you, but later on. But having been obedient to the call, the others follow Jesus. Jesus is the example here. Verse 23, but as they sailed, he fell asleep. Now, it's like your friend convincing you to go on a cruise with them to the Bahamas. You're not sure if you want to go, but they make it sound good. So you said, yeah, I'll tag along, I'll go with you. And you're so excited about it. You're looking forward to the day. You're looking forward to just hanging out, talking about old times, seeing what this trip has to offer. You're quite excited. And you get onto the cruise. And you're ready to, I don't know, do the dancing, the line dancing, what they do, or go to the theater on the cruise, or do bowling on the cruise, or see the artwork on the cruise. You're excited to get involved in whatever is happening. And when you look for your friend, you find your friend asleep. This was a friend that invited you. This is a friend you expect to be with you so you can enjoy your cruise. And here your friend is fast asleep. You know, we're all on a journey, each and every one of us. And we don't know what lays ahead. But we do know that when we're on that journey, we're to do our best on that journey, because you can't rely wholly on your friend. This is Jesus. This is a friend above all friends. This is the guy that everybody can rely on. He's sleeping. What a letdown. You go on your cruise, you want to enjoy, and your friend is sleeping. What a letdown. You can imagine how these disciples felt. Jesus wanted to take them privately to the other side. Oh, I wonder what's happening over there. What has he got in store for us? Woo, woo, woo. And as I got on the boat, look around, and he's sleeping. Matthew chapter 8, verse 24. And suddenly a great tempest arose on the sea, so that the boat was covered with the waves. But he was asleep. So everybody else is frantic. They're all excited. You know how some people are excitable. A little bit of water comes in. Oh, we're going to drown. But this was no little water. The boat was covered. And you look around at their friend who invited them on this boat, and he's asleep. He's not frantic. He's peacefully sleeping. Now the truth here, this truth here shows us Jesus was a genuine human being, because Jesus had the same basic needs as all of us. It shows Jesus' humanity. This is what qualified Jesus to be our merciful intercessor between God, us, and God the Father. The fact that he's like us. He gets tired, and he himself wants to avoid the crowd. He gets exhausted. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 17. Therefore, in all things, he had to be made like his brethren. Talking about Jesus Christ. That he might be merciful and faithful high priest in the things pertaining to God, to make propitiation for the sins of the people. For Jesus to be our example, he had to be like his brethren. He had to be like us. He had to be the kind of person that will fall asleep. And he had to be the kind of person that gets exhausted. He had to be the kind of person that wants to avoid the crowd. You see, the Bible lets us know that angels do not suffer temptations like we do. They do not suffer, and they do not succumb to temptations like we do. So therefore, angels are not good examples for us human beings. Therefore, the Christ, the Messiah, had to come like his brethren. He had to come like us to be a perfect example to us. And the example Christ is showing here in the midst of a storm. He's at peace. He's asleep. He's in Never Never Land. The Messiah had to come as a human being to be that perfect high priest in order to get us from where we are to reconciliate us to God the Father. This is the example what Jesus is showing. In the midst of the storm, I'm at peace. He goes on to say, and the windstorm came down on the lake, and they were filling with water and were in jeopardy. It's significant that Jesus slept, and his sleep was deep and sound, even though the boat was filling up with water. The noise of the waves did not wake him up. The Bible tells us that a believer, he will sleep and be peaceful in his sleep because he knows the Lord is with him. Proverbs chapter 3 verse 24. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. Yes, you will lie down and your sleep will be sweet. And in the Psalms chapter 4 verse 8, I will both lie down in peace and sleep. For you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. You alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. And this is the reason why when Jesus was awoken out of his sleep, he rebuked the disciples with a question. Where is your faith? How are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? Mark chapter 4 verse 40. He asked them the question, how is it that you have no faith? The strong winds, it whipped up the waters in such huge waves that they came over and started to fill the boat. And the passengers felt that their lives were in peril. This thing is bigger than me. I cannot control this thing. The waves are sweeping down in the boat, crashing down on the bow of the boat. Now Jesus is in the back of the boat, so he's least affected. The front of the boat is the worst part. So the buoyancy and the boat floating up and down, bobbing up and down, and the water coming in, made the disciples terrified. But Jesus was sleeping peacefully. And they are on this journey because of him. We're all on our journey because of Christ. The things we go through day in and day out, the persecution that we may feel, is all because of Christ. What I'm trying to say here, that our dependency on Christ goes far more than we can ever fully comprehend. Because even when things are going wrong, Christ is right there with us. We may think he's asleep. We may think he's at rest. He's resting. He has to be resting because so many things are going wrong. He's not taking note of the situation that I'm in. He's not seeing what's happening to me. But Jesus is right there by our side. Verse 24. And they came to him and awoke him, saying, Master, Master, we are perishing. With some irritation, I believe, they must have noticed Jesus' peaceful slumber, and they would ask themselves, how is it that he's so peaceful? How is it that he's asleep? Has he not seen our plight? Does he not care? Does he not understand that I am perishing? So I imagine that when the disciples awoke Jesus, they didn't just gently awoke him. They must have roughed him up a bit. Wake up, Master, we're perishing, we're perishing. Now, in the Gospels, their statements differ from one Gospel to the other. In Matthew chapter 8, verse 25, it says, Lord, save us, we are perishing. In Mark chapter 4, verse 38, it says, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? And in Luke chapter 8, 24, it says, Master, Master, we are perishing. And I believe all these statements took place because everybody was frantic. And it's probably that they all said it at the same time. Maybe they say it at different times, but they're all expressing their views right now. I believe all these statements revealed different emotions and frustration at the fact that Jesus was sleeping at a time when they needed him the most. So, in the records there, it's recorded that all these statements are true, I believe. Matthew, he seems to record a cry for help, the way he writes it. Luke, he seems to make a statement of doom and gloom. We're going to perish. And Mark, he recalls But the disciples are rebuking Jesus for his aloofness. Jesus, you know better than this. You was the cause why I'm here. You're supposed to be looking after me. It says, then he arose and rebuked the wind and the raging of the water, and they ceased, and there was a calm. Arose from his slumber, Jesus rebuked the winds and the wave, and instantly they ceased. Which is absolutely amazing, because waters do not stop just like that. Even when the winds stop, once the waves are churning, they continue churning for some time. The waves generate more waves. Waves generate more waves. Waves generate more waves. It takes time for it to slow down. It's like you roll down a boulder off a hill and it picks up speed. And the more it picks up speed, the faster it's going. The faster it's going. It doesn't stop immediately. Jesus, he commands, and not only the wind stops, but the wave stops. And the disciples, they were so amazed at what they saw. They couldn't even take in what Jesus was saying, because the fear that came upon them was greater than the fear of the situation they found themselves in. Just Jesus commanding the wind and the waves to stop, and it actually stopped. That fear, seeing that, was greater than the fear of them actually perishing because of the wind and the waves. Now, only God can command these elements, and they all knew it. These are experienced people. They knew only God can do something like this. So they are questioning themselves, who is this person that he can do these things? I want us to notice the psalmist, how the psalmist, he attributes this kind of power to God alone. Psalms 107, verse 24 to 30. They see the works of the Lord and his wonders in the deep. For he commands and raises the stormy winds, which lifts up the waves of the sea. They mount up to the heavens. They go down again to the depths. Their soul melts because of trouble. They read to and fro and stagger like a drunken man and are at their wits' end. They're frantic. Then they cry out to the Lord in their trouble, and he brings them out of their distresses. He calms the storm so that the waves are still. Then they are glad because they are quiet. So he guides them to their desired haven. He guides them to their desired haven. Jesus had already told them, we're going to the other side. We're going to the other side. And this is the first point that Luke wants his readers to understand. That Jesus has complete control over creation. Therefore, he must be God. Because only God can control these elements. These are far greater than any human being can control. Jesus, he gently rebukes the disciples for their fear or their lack of faith. However, they are too shaken to fully understand what has taken place. They are totally overwhelmed by what they have seen. And the fear of what they've seen, it differs in both kind and intensity to the fear that they experience being in the storm. What Jesus has just done is even more startling than the life-threatening situation that they found themselves in. Now, this story is simply told by Luke, and many of the details has been omitted. The kind of things we want to see in a story, the details to help us understand, they are not here. And I believe he does this purposefully, so that this passage would be empathetically clear. But this incident caused us to focus primarily on the lack of the disciples' faith. The disciples were afraid, and their words and action towards Jesus was less than what was expected of them. Verse 25, but he said to them, Where is your faith? Now, this is the second point that Luke wants his readers to understand. Where is your faith? Where is it at? Do you really think that you would perish when you're with Jesus, God among flesh? Do you really think that you would perish when you're with your Lord and Master? The only way the disciples would have gone on that trip and not panic if they fully understand who Jesus is and understand his purpose. Then they would not have panicked. Then they would have shown all faith. But they did not believe that Jesus could save them. They did not believe that they would make it to the other side. They did not fully understand the kind of power that Jesus had, even though they saw many miracles done by Jesus. His miracles, his capabilities, was nothing new to them. But this was far greater than anything they had ever seen before. When you think about stealing the water, something like this had not taken place since way back yonder, since the Red Sea had opened up, or on a lesser extent, when the Jordan was open. When man spoke a word to the sea and the sea obeyed, this kind of thing had not been seen in quite a while. So when Jesus does this, they are truly overwhelmed. The apostles' lack of faith remind us that even those who lived with Jesus and walked with Jesus found it difficult to have 100% faith all of the time. And they were with him. They seen his act. And they could not have 100% faith all of the time. The disciples were a lot like us. And they were rebuked for their lack of faith. So in extension, we are too. When we're in a dire situation and we don't show complete confidence in our God, we too are rebuked for our lack of faith. If Jesus can rescue them in the midst of this storm, in this dangerous place where they can't get out of it by themselves, if he can rescue them in such a situation, he can rescue you and I too. Because he never changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So in the storms of life, whether it be sickness, the loss of a job, marital problems, the church falling apart, whatever the case may be, wherever your destination is when you're on your journey, Jesus has the ability to get you there. The situation may not seem clear-cut. It may not be going the way you anticipated it to go. We're all on a journey. And some of us are going to take the direct route, and some of us are going to take the scenic route. Some of us are going to take the quick route. Some of us are going to take the slow route. But the point is, if you're with Jesus, no matter what happens, when the devil throws a spanner in the works, Jesus is there to make sure you reach your destination. The other thing I want us to understand, and Luke wants us to understand, is that the trials and troubles we often find ourselves in could be the result of God working in your life. That could be the result of the person who caused them to be in this predicament was the Lord himself. The troubles and trials and tribulation you go through, the dangers you often find yourself in, could be the result of God working in your life. It's not that God disowned you. God is working in your life. Something beautiful, wonderful is going to happen. The Lord promised them that he would go to the other side. John chapter 16 verse 33. These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. See, the Lord did not promise that we would not have troubles. We wouldn't have trials and tribulation. He did not promise we'll have a peaceful life. He promised that we would have tribulation. And he told us to be of good cheer because he has overcome the world. And he is our example. Deuteronomy chapter 31 verse 8. And the Lord, he is the one who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you. Do not fear nor be dismayed. James chapter 1 verse 12. Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those who love him. Your greatest success may come out of your worst failure. When things are going wrong, when things couldn't be worse, the result of that might line you up for your success. And they were afraid and marveled, saying to one another, who can this be? For he commands even the winds and water, and they obey him. The apostles, they marveled at the powerful display of Jesus. Jesus' supernatural ability to control these elements. And this can be immensely comforting to a Christian in a storm. You see, faith in Jesus is never misplaced. If he can calm the seas with one word, he can calm the storms of life that you're going through. Who can this be, the question is? And this question is related to the recent story that Jesus gave about the sower. What kind of soil did these disciples have? What kind of soil were they made out of? At this moment, in this moment, they seemed to be the soil that had thorns. They believed until they were beset by the cares of life. And Jesus exhorts them to have faith and to be of good courage, to be the good soil, to take in what Jesus says and allow it to transform them, allow it to change them, to change their hearts. And instead, they reacted with fear, thinking that Jesus' power was unknown to them. They knew his capabilities. Now, Luke chapter 8, it gives us a series of parables, a series of stories, and practical examples of different types of faith that people express under different circumstances. And the disciples have seen Jesus heal sicknesses, injuries, and expose demons. But the control of the sea is on another level. They have not seen this. They probably heard old-time stories, but they have not seen this. And the sea, it represents chaos and all that man cannot control. This is out of our control. This is beyond me. Only God can take the formless water and bring it to order, like he did at the beginning of time in Genesis. Such control over water has not been seen for so long a period. These people, they're going frantic. They don't understand, cannot comprehend. So it's reasonable for the disciples to respond in this way. And it's also reasonable, having seen them, for them to rethink who this guy is. Who is this guy? Truly, who is he? Having seen what they saw. And as they understood Jesus, as their understanding grows, their faith grows also. And this is what happens to all of us. We're all at different levels. We're on a journey, but we're on different levels of this journey. And as we understand our Lord, we understand his purpose, we understand who he is, what he represents. As we understand all these things, our faith grows along with us. We may not always be at this place, or none of us may not ever be at this place. But when we're in a dire situation, we can exhibit 100% faith. What they call great faith. We may not be at this place, but we can be at the place we can trust and have confidence that if this is happening to me, there must be a reason for it happening to me. My Lord wouldn't abandon me so. Where is your faith? What level is it at? What kind of soil are you made of? Like the fertile soil, these disciples, they are contemplating and asking. They're not just merely walking away, because they're saying to themselves, what kind of man is he? They're thinking about it. This is the purpose of parables, to get us to dig deeper, to ask questions. The fact that they're questioning is a good sign. And further along, Peter, because they're questioning, because they're examining, because they're thinking and contemplating on all these things, Peter, later on, will be able to find out and tell everybody, confess that the teacher, what is there with them, is Christ, the Christ of God. Luke chapter 9, verse 20. It's only because they're now questioning and thinking, rethinking, because of what they've seen. What have you seen? What has the Lord done in your life that makes you want to question and rethink? Has something happened in your life that has brought you from 0 to 10? It can happen. Sometimes your faith is here, and something happens to take you from here to here. Where is your faith at? The naming of Jesus as the Messiah only goes so far. The lesson here is that only God can control the sea and the waves. The lesson is that this person is actually God manifest in flesh. We cannot prevent death. That's beyond us. All of us are going to die. We cannot prevent sicknesses, getting ill and having diseases and having symptoms and so forth. All of that is beyond us. We can't control the weather. All of that is beyond us. But here's a character who can control all those things. It causes us to rethink and dig deeper and come up to the knowledge that this must be God himself. Only God can show such power, demonstrate such power. And Jesus is full of the power of God. Jesus not only has power to display, but he also has compassion to act. Jesus desires to do. It is amazing to see his great power. He's done many things in the past that the disciples saw. That's wonderful. But he not only has the power to show off, to exhibit, as it were, but he has the desire to do, to help others. I want us to understand that Jesus has never used his power to profit himself, to elevate himself. The power he has demonstrated has always been to help others, to act on others. And this is the amazing thing, because there are so many people in the world who have such power and ability. The power to help out others. People who are billionaires have power, the resources to help others, but they don't have that compassion to act. Don't have that compassion to act. Many a times the Lord has blessed us with ability. We may not have power over the elements, but we do have power, especially power over those beneath us, if we're employers, if we're parents or whatever. We have power, but how many of us have the compassion to act? How many of us has the compassion to do something favorably for others, rather than just use our power and ability for ourselves? Jesus is always acting on behalf of everybody else. Therefore, when he said he wanted to go to the other side, though he was tired, yes, and he wanted to get away from the crowd, that trip, that journey, wasn't really for his benefit. Because Jesus uses his power and ability for others. Jesus knew that this storm was going to rage. He's omniscient. He knows everything. He knew the storm was coming. So Jesus could have said, okay, let's delay it. But he did not. He could have prevented his brethren from going through that. But he did not. I want us to understand that there are some things the Lord is going to allow us to go through. He's not going to prevent us from going through it. But he's going to be with us while we go through it. The trip to the other side was for their benefit. It wasn't just for him getting away from the storm. It was for their benefit. Where is your faith? My point in all of this is that faith looked to God to save us. That's what faith does. Our faith is looking to God to save us from destruction. Now, Abraham, he was commanded by God to leave the place he knows well, the place he's born and raised. He knows that place well, to go to a place that he does not know. To leave his comfort, leave his family, his safety net, as it were, and go to a place that he does not know. And for those of you here today who's anticipating going to a place where you're not sure of. Perhaps starting a new start in a foreign land, a foreign place, a new job, or whatever the case may be. I want you to take comfort in this fact. But although Abraham left what he knew, his safety net, and went away, his friends and everybody looking at him would have said that's a risk that he's taking. He's flirting with the unknown. That's a huge risk. That's playing with disaster. You've got nothing planned over there. You don't have any family over there. You've got no help over there. You don't even have a job over there. You've got no home over there. You don't know what lays over there. Over there could be a terrible place to live. And you're leaving your place of comfort, what you know, and you're going over there because God told you to go over there. I want you to take comfort in the fact that God knows all things. God knows all things. He went over there, and not only was he blessed, he sees and everybody through him was blessed because he followed suit. Placing your trust in God. The world will tell you that what you're doing is not right. You're playing with danger. You're playing with fire. You're going into the unknown. Therefore, you're going to be defeated. Faith, our trust in God, is there to save us. To save us from disease, to save us from disasters, to save us from destruction, to save us from death, to save us from defeat. All faith is faith that God will save us from something and to something. That's what our faith is there for. It's saving us from something or saving us for something or to something. Jesus, he had a purpose and he had a plan. And because he had a purpose and a plan, he could be at great peace because he knew where it was going. He knew what lay ahead. So for all of us to know the Lord is to have great peace. One final note. Even though the disciples' faith failed, God's purpose did not fail. Despite the disciples' fear and disbelief, and the fact that they feared that the boat was going to sink, it did not sink. Their failure did not stop God from achieving what he wanted to achieve. The boat did not sink. They all ended up safely on the shore. The failures of our faith do not frustrate the purposes of God. Paul puts it like this. He said, if we are faithless, he remains faithful. He cannot deny himself. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 13. So this is the bedrock of our faith. But God is good. He is powerful. He is purposeful. He is intentional. And his purpose will stand. And even when we fail in faith, he would not fail being faithful. He is always faithful, even when you think not. You don't know the end, but he knows the end. He knows the end. I heard Bible teachers often say, with Christ in the boat, you can smile at the storm. And certainly, that is true. There's a sense of truth in that. When you know the Lord is with you, you can go about your business happy, knowing that the Lord is with you, because he's not going to leave you nor forsake you. And his thoughts towards you are thoughts of good, for hope, for a future. But I don't want you to leave you with a false impression. Because sometimes we do place our faith in God, in Jesus, and the boat does sink. He doesn't prevent the boat from sinking. Sometimes we place our faith in Jesus, and it's the 11th hour, and we're hoping he's going to come in and transform, change things. And he doesn't come in and change things. You see, John the Baptist, he had faith in Jesus. Jesus sent back his disciples and told John the things you have seen and heard. But John was not saved. He lost his head. Peter was delivered from prison. But James wasn't. James was put to death. So, what should we do if we're trusting in Jesus and our boat sinks? Our miracle does not come to pass. What do? The answer is, we trust the Lord as we go under. We continue trusting him as we go down. We continue singing God's praises for all that he has done for us. In the past, we look back and remember everything that he's done. And we take courage and we praise him anyway. And have hope and courage in the fact that no matter what lies ahead of us, it's going to be for our good. Because he's not going to abandon us. He's not that kind of God. Whether he instantly calms the storm, or the storm takes some time to calm down, like it usually does. Or if the storm doesn't calm at all, and the boat actually does sink, we take courage and confidence in God. You know, God can be glorified through our storms. The bigger the storm, the greater he is glorified. Jesus was glorified to a greater degree than if the storm had not taken place. It's because this storm taken place and the disciples saw what they saw, that's what gave them courage later on to be able to stand when they needed to stand. Because of what they've been through here. Your greatest failures may be the beginning of your greatest success. You don't know what lays ahead, but the Lord does. Who can this be? For he commands the winds and the water, and they obey him. The question is, will you obey him? Will you obey him? Although things look bleak, will you obey him? Isaiah 26 verse 3. You will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you. Isaiah says to those in the present that perfect peace is possible here and now. The Lord provides this to those whose mind is focused on him. This peace to those who trust in him. Perfect peace is not just a state living with anxiety and fear and such like. Because nothing is perfect. Nothing is easy. But this peace that the prophet is describing here is an eternal peace where you have the feeling of confidence, complete confidence and commitment and independence of circumstances. It doesn't matter what's happening around you. You are still confident because you know what you know, what you know. You know what you know. I know too much about Jesus for you to cause me to doubt him. You know what you know, what you know. Even when things are not going right, you know the Lord will provide all that you need in the present, in the future, and for salvation. Why do many of the Lord's people then live in anxiety and fear and conflict? Isaiah would answer, because their minds are not focused on the Lord. Paul describes it this way. He says, the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guide your hearts and mind in Christ Jesus. Philippians 4 verse 7. To live in perfect peace is not realistic. Because Jesus already told us, if they hate me, they're going to hate you. We're going to go through trials and tribulation. But what Jesus is saying, just focus on me and I will get you to your destination. Wherever it is that I need you to be at, you will get there. Church people, all of us have our plans and our purposes individually. All of us. We're all on a journey. Eventually, we're going to meet up at the same place in heaven. But until we get there, we're scattered. We're going different routes. And we're going on this route with Christ with us. And on those routes, we're going to have obstacles. And what Luke wants us to understand there, he wants us to be firm in our decision-making process. That no matter what lies ahead, as long as your trust and confidence is in Jesus Christ, he's going to get you to the place where he needs you to be at. Whatever's going to happen in your life for the future, whatever God holds for you independently, not as a body of church, but you and you alone, whatever God has in store for you, even though things may not be going the way you anticipate and the way you planned, just like them, do not go into a frantic stage. Just recognize that the Lord is doing something in your life, and whatever the outcome is going to be the best thing for you. Have that faith and confidence. even when the ship is sinking. Have that faith and confidence that you're going to come out of this okay. I want to say that I love you and appreciate you, and I do appreciate you. I want to thank Calvary Chapel West for all your hard work and everything you've done for the last 2 years since I've been a pastor. Your devotion, your commitment, your sacrifices, I want to thank you all for it. Even at times when you could not be here, you were still praying and rooting for the body. And when you could be here, you made yourself available. Because of you, other people have come on board. And some have come and some have left. And that's the nature of church. That's the nature of family. When we raise a family so that our kids can go off. This is the same thing with God. He raises his family, brings people in, he blesses them with many gifts and talents, and he sends them out. And they go off. And as we go out into the world, things happen. Just like when we send our children out, things happen. But as a parent, you love your child, no matter how old they get. Your children could be in their 50s, their 60s, but you're a parent. You still love them. You're still rooting for them. And so it is with us as a family. No matter what your future has in hold, always remember, don't be overcome by what you see. Just know that Jesus is in the boat with you.